time that Theismann ever had to wait for me. I made my reputation running pass routes, and all the other top receivers in the country were catching balls like this, and I was catching balls like this. And eventually, so I said, "Is it my speed? What is it, Joe? What is it?" He said, "Well, I'm just testing you out. So eventually, he got to about here, and I was. Where are the, so we look at Odell Beckham, making these kind of catches. I didn't have an opportunity to do that. I could do it, but no opportunity. So this will be the first time. Don't tell him when he gets there. No opportunity.
Yeah, go ahead. In case you guys didn't tell by that great introduction from our one and only Thom Gatewood, Thom is a former All-American here at Notre Dame, a career record holder here at Notre Dame, and a member of the class of 1972, everybody. Thom Gatewood again. Go ahead, let's...
So that was my way of just sort of warming you guys up. I'm not shy. Wide receivers are never shy. We just don't like our clothes to get dirty. We don't like to hit the ground if we can avoid it. So, that's that kind of thing. Keep a sense of humor, laugh it off, don't take it too seriously.
Luckily for you, you didn't hit the ground too much when you were playing here at Notre Dame. You were walking into the end zone a few times.
Yeah, I did that a few times, and I guess those touchdown records lasted for about 30, 35 years before the likes of Samardzija, Golden Tate, and those guys. But I always prefaced it with them. I've called them, I've congratulated them on breaking some of those records. But I couldn't keep but reminding them that when I played, you couldn't play varsity football as a freshman. So I only had 3 years to set my records. 10 games a season, that's 30. 2 bowl games, 32. Those guys had 48. Plus the bowls that they played in. And they still took 35 years to break. So I feel like this would be, yes, that's the word. Asterisk. Say, hey. Let's tell the full story here. What's the real deal here? But, that's sort of my take on the record books. Just setting the records straight.
No complaints out of this audience, I'm sure. Now, before you got to Notre Dame, though, you come from Baltimore originally. Oh, a couple Baltimore. Now, I read something when I was preparing for this interview that you played football and your parents didn't know about it. Yeah. Go ahead. How'd that work out?
I broke the cardinal rules of lying to my parents for almost my whole time through high school. The deal was, my parents, I have to give a background. My parents, a little bit, my dad owned a construction company. My mom, and my dad had a 6th grade education, but his drive was, I want to be my own man. I want to work for myself. So he learned the trade in the military and developed his own business. Hard-working guy, 6 days a week. Hardly saw him except on Sundays. We went to church every Sunday. Mom took care of our spiritual growth at home every day. Thou shalt not lie. Okay, we did that. So what happened was, my parents made a big deal about education. It was very, very key to our success, and it became a part of my culture. And the kids my 3 brothers and sisters, all was a part of that culture that we grew up in. So the deal was, all I heard about was college, get a college degree. No one was putting any money aside in any bank accounts to do that. So it became a matter of, how do I flip myself and get to college? How does it happen? I've got to do this on my own somehow. So, at 13 years of age, 1963, that's when I sort of got started. I went to a special junior high school that specialized in enrichment in science, math, and English. So I left my neighborhood to go to this school. Cranked it out, became an honor student, did really well in class. Mother was happy, Dad was happy. I'm on the right track to get to college. Preparation. Then it becomes time to figure out which high school to go to. I decided I'm going to a college prep school, 45 minutes away from home. It's a public school, so it doesn't cost the folks any money, but gives me a quality education. And I'm an honor student straight across the board. Mom's happy. I love baseball from the time I was 6 years old until currently today. So I joined the baseball team. My mother was okay with that. It's kind of a low contact sport. Doesn't take a lot of time away. Doesn't hit the books, doesn't hurt the books. My friends decide to coax me into joining the football team to try to go out for football. I've never played organized football at that point. No organized coaching, no playbooks, nothing that smacked of real football. Nothing but sandlot type stuff where guys, 3 or 4 guys say, hey, let's go play football in the playground. You do that and it's touch football, but nothing that's anything resembling organized football. So they convinced me that try out for football. If you make it, then you're hanging out with us. If you don't make it, or you don't even try out, you go home and your best buds, we're at school knocking out plays and learning how to play football. So I decide, okay, I'll try out. They didn't tell me that of this school of 4,000 boys in Baltimore, that 600 of them would come out for football. And most of them had played Pop Warner football, organized football, CYO football, you name it. My school had 4,200 graduates. My graduating class was 1,800, and 600 of those guys came out. And everybody wanted to be Joe Theismann. Everybody wanted to be a quarterback. And when I walked up to the front of the auditorium with this long line of 600 guys, my coach, George Young, was sitting in his little chair. George Young ultimately worked for Don Shula of the Baltimore Colts. Went to Miami with him after being with Shula at Baltimore, winning 2 championships, NFL championships. Then going to work with the Shula group, that same 72 team that wins all those games. George Young helped get involved there. George is sitting there interviewing each and every one of those 600 guys walking up, and his first question was, okay, so you look like you're 5'11", 170 pounds, and what position do you want to play? And I said, Coach, I don't know. I never played organized sports, don't really know. I'm a really good baseball player, and I play third base. He said, good, receiver. Okay, next. My career started with him being my first mentor, George Young. George Young, after Miami, goes to the New York Giants, which, interestingly enough, I become a New York Giant, but not while he was there. This was after. But he picks up as a general manager and drafts people like Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carson, you name it down to Phil Simms. All these names become big household names. That's the caliber of guy George Young was. George is responsible for this happening. Because after going to about 200 different school offers to decide my senior year where I'm going to go, and I'll come back to the hiding and lying to my mother. So let's go to that first. Lying to my mother came with me making the team, becoming a 2-time All-State player, becoming a parade All-America football player. My mother didn't know, and my father didn't know, because 1, we didn't subscribe to a newspaper. 2, neither my mother or father are sports fans, would never go to a sports page to begin with. Don't watch the sports on news. My dad, as a contractor, one day goes to a client to write out the invoice for the job that he's done. It says Gatewood and Sons. Before he finishes up, he asks, "Does your son play football?" I said, "No." "Never played football?" No. So the guy gets the newspaper article, he puts it in front of him, and he says, "There's a photo spread here of a guy. He looks a lot like you." His name is Thom Gatewood. You're Thom Gatewood and Sons. So what's the scoop? And he said, "I believe that man. I'm used to talking out loud." So he says, "Wow, this is embarrassing. You asked my son." So that day, that night, I had a big talking to. But the good part was I had everything on my side because the deal that I could offer them was, I'm going to college somewhere, and it's for free. And all I got to do is work my butt off and earn my right to say that I have that degree, and that's with me the rest of my life. And so I didn't have anybody say, "Let's go out to the woodshed and let's whack you," because we made some bad choices. Everything was okay, and it worked out okay. So my friends and my teammates' mothers laundered all of my equipment because all that time that I was hiding, and I just told my parents I'm doing a tutorial after school, or I'm doing a study hall, or whatever it was to account for my time missing. But all along, I was being prepared for something beyond.
Of course, that something beyond was Notre Dame. You already mentioned that you had to sit out your freshman year, which is why you're still not on top of the record books. Now, your sophomore year, you jump in, and the team has a great season. They go to the Cotton Bowl. It's the first bowl for Notre Dame in 45 years. I believe we have a clip for that. Let's take a peek, and then I'll ask you about the Cotton Bowl.
At the podium will be Thom Gatewood, the leading receiver with 47 catches, a 203-pound tackle from Baltimore. Gatewood swings it left in. About 8 yards off left tackle, though, causing a power eye left. Second with a four-man front, a couple linebackers with the inside, to straight out left. He's throwing it off deep. Gatewood is up on the 15. Joe Theismann throws a touchdown pass, his 14th of the year, to Thom Gatewood, and covered 54 yards as Gatewood got behind the Texas secondary.
So, Tom, 54 yards on that touchdown pass and one of college football's biggest stages. What do you remember about that play, and what do you remember about the excitement of going to the first bowl for Notre Dame in 45 years?
The initial excitement was finding out why we were going. After 45-year absence, the university, Father Joyce and Father Hesberg, met with the athletic department and decided that a way to fund a program that they were going to set up would be to take the gate receipts from a bowl game and take the Fighting Irish to an area that they hadn't been in a long, long time, and that was to go to the Cotton Bowl. The proceeds from it would ultimately go into a scholarship fund for minority students to come to Notre Dame. To give a better perspective, in 1968, when I enrolled here, the African American population for students was less than 1%. That has increased dramatically since 50 years has gone by. But I feel like I was part of that pioneering, break the ice kind of a setup. My freshman year, 5 African Americans chose Notre Dame to be their launch pad. The year before, the class before, 3 African Americans decided it would be their launch pad. For me, again, I use the word preparation before. Preparation now becomes, it leaves high school and it's now at college, because I want that degree more than anything. The NFL is not on my mind. I want a degree. So, as far as that moment also paralleled with an interesting turn of the country. The country was embroiled in conflict. The Vietnam War was going on. Streets in Detroit and Chicago and Memphis, and there were sit-ins, demonstrations, there was segregation all over the country. The 200 offers that I had came from none of the schools that are in the southeast and southwest part of the country. The big powers that we have in football now are Alabama, Florida State, Miami. You go down through the south, Georgia, all those schools, none of them fielded any African-American players. Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, USC, these are schools that were in fact, and for decades, deciding that performance was key, not your color. So I aspired to that. That was a big decision on my part of the big decision, to make the decision to come to Notre Dame. In that stadium, the Cotton Bowl, Darrell Royal had an undefeated team. Notre Dame comes in and we have an opportunity to challenge that team. And up until the last 38 seconds of the game, we were in charge. We were leading the game. My touchdown was the first touchdown scored by Notre Dame that day. There had been a field goal before. I scored the touchdown. We were up 10-0, and we lost by 4 points, 12-17 at the end. Theismann had a big day. I had a big day. We had a lot of fun. But the statement made by Darrell Royal, who is a Hall of Fame coach and had won national championships, when asked, when will you desegregate? When will the tide change at Texas? His comment was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So now I feel that I can tell that story because this ring signifies that I'm in the college football Hall of Fame. Don't judge anybody by their color. Just give them an opportunity to perform. In order to perform, you need some preparation, as well as adding execution. And then your performance will really be what you should be held accountable for. So that day was really cool. But the touching thing, because we're in an alumni association, and we're in a people who love Notre Dame. There's a bunch of you who graduated from Notre Dame or had family who's graduated from Notre Dame. When our team went to Florida, the Dallas Alumni Club in town arranged a lottery. The lottery consisted of the 90 players who were going to come and make the trip to Dallas. All of us would be adopted by a family in Dallas for 2 days. We would be in their homes. We would sleep in their beds. We would eat breakfast with their children. We would be an influence and an impact on these little kids who eventually would aspire. The family who chose me, 3 of their 5 children came to Notre Dame. They were called the Ronan family. We landed at Love Field in Dallas at 2 o'clock in the morning. The 5 boys who were like stair steps were wearing red pajamas, the kind with the trapdoor. Dad asleep, they're tired, they're waiting for our flight. They greet us and they're holding, welcome Thom Gatewood. And that number 44, was on their little minds, and that was, my deal. I adopted them, we remained friends, and to this day, we are still friends. We visit each other, we see each other all the time. So we had this lasting, so that's a human interest thing that sort of gets, lost in the game and the fans and what was going on. But when I got that score, my heart lit up because I knew that those kids were in the stands. But I had a whole generation of people who had been suppressed. And I'm playing in an environment where myself, Clarence Ellis, who was an All-American defensive back, who's going to visit me tomorrow, by the way, at my home here in South Bend, where I live, to have brunch before going to do some tailgating for the Virginia game. We are still in touch and friends. He played for the Atlanta Falcons. It was tough. It was tough being in an environment that's hostile. And you have this thing about what he said about race relations really bothered me. And so when I scored that score, I was like really pumped up. I can't even describe what it was like.
You also went on to become the first African-American captain in Notre Dame football history your senior season. You talked a little bit about this race relations during that time. What did that mean to you to be voted on and have that record as the first black captain in Notre Dame history?
It's cool when you're judged by your peers. It's one thing when you have some coaches who decide whether you're first team, third team, fourth team, 15, but when your teammates elect you, it means that they really respect your leadership qualities, they respect your ability. So if I try to, again, pull out race, by the time I'm a senior, on our Notre Dame squad, we have about 16 African Americans. All told, we have 120 players on our team. So if all we did was just say, let's be partisan, let's be total partisan, and you guys vote for non-African Americans and you guys vote for African Americans, I would have been the captain. So obviously, the majority of the team said, this guy's qualified, we want to follow him into battle. And I become this first African American to be captain. I felt like I was cemented into the tradition of Notre Dame, that the tradition of fairness, the tradition of being judged by who you are, not what you look like. So for me, Notre Dame will always be in my heart. Those guys who did that, and fortunately, when I was a freshman, I was the captain of the freshman team as well. So I had a little core going, but I wasn't campaigning during that 3-year period. But it all sort of worked out that way.
Now, we're going to open it up for questions here in just a minute, but before we do that, you and Joe Theismann basically are synonymous with each other. You can't have one without the other. So we actually have Joe Theismann here today. We're going to go ahead and bring him in, and we'll take some questions for both of you. There's Joe. Joe. How are you? I'm great. How are you? Good to see you here. Now we'll stand. We'll take a couple questions here, and then we'll interview you, Joe. But I want to get this started. So Beck, your junior year,
This is the size of the jersey he wore. It's funny you brought your old jersey, you skinny little kid, you. That's right, you still can.
I want to talk about the commonality, though, because I got to flash this, because this is the guy. Yeah. This is the guy. Because I just have to tell you the story about this. When I was in high school, I was a tight end and strictly a receiver, inside, not outside. So when I get to Notre Dame, this jersey is thrown at me and said, okay, this is your jersey, next. And I said, why am I getting a 44? I'm a receiver. And in those days, 80s. The 80s series was, he said, no, according to my list here, you're a halfback. You're a halfback, this is your number. I said, well, I got to talk to somebody. I'm not a halfback. So I spent my entire freshman season learning how to be a running back, when 3 seasons before in high school, I was just learning how to be a football player. So then I'm doing this and doing this. And one day, after me politicking in lines, practicing with receivers, every chance I had, being very annoying, like this, being in front of the receiver coaches, and the Parsegan said, please, I tell you, I'm a receiver, not a running back. I'll never play here if I'm a running back. This guy, Coach Parsegan says, okay, Joe, let's get this guy off our backs here. Throw him some balls and just let him embarrass himself and, go ahead. And Joe throws me balls and I'm catching them, I'm diving, I'm doing whatever I can to on my one-day audition. And a couple of days later, I exchanged I'm stuck with this. But I have a new position. Now I'm like number 8 on the depth chart. And I gotta work my way up. But fortunately, I finally get to play with this guy, and we just had a really great team.
You guys, though, you guys had such a great connection your senior year.
Thank
your
you
junior
for
year.
giving me a chance to be involved in this. Just watching you is a thrill for me.
Now, Joe,
It's a thrill for them, too.
you caught 77 passes, a mark that stood for 35 years. The next highest receiver had 17, so you liked him a little bit.
Yeah, he always was open. If he wasn't, he would always tell me he was open. So if somebody's open or they tell you you're open, they probably have a pretty good feel of what's going on. Actually, Era and they really designed the offense around Tom's ability. He was very special. He wasn't one of the smaller receivers in college football. He was a bigger guy. And I think the 44 was really going to be a designation to be a fullback, to be perfectly honest with you, not a halfback.
I'd have really been lost.
Yeah, then we wouldn't have been able to find you down there somewhere. But he just had a knack. And from a quarterback's perspective, what we try and do is find people that can give us easier targets to throw to. And when it came to Tom, everything about him made it real simple. Where he was in a route, the way he'd catch the ball, the fluidness with which he would run the routes. And he made it real easy and comfortable. I had the same thing, fortunately, in professional football with a guy by the name of Art Monk, who's in the Hall of Fame. And Art was the same way. Tommy reminded me a lot of Art, and Art reminded me a lot of Tom. And it was their ability to be able to just visually look at him and feel real comfortable that when you threw it, first of all, you knew they were going to catch it. And secondly, they knew about where the defenders were so they could work their ways around them to give us a chance to be able to complete the pass versus have it knocked down.
Before we sit down with Joe here, we do have time for just a couple of questions. Does anyone in the audience have a question? Go ahead, get a hand up there and right there.
Yeah, I maybe described it before I came in, but Tom, I grew up, I'm roughly 10 years younger than both of you, so I watched you every Sunday
You're a
morning.
lot younger than that, some of us.
Yeah.
Namely
I
me.
watched you every Sunday morning with Lindsey Nelson and the replays and everything like that. And Tom, could you tell me about your recruitment? Because I think I heard a story a few years ago, but it's fuzzy now about meeting Ara Parsegian and you being recruited to come to Notre Dame.
Yes, first of all.
Here, use a microphone so people can hear you.
First of all, it was a humbling experience for me because the time that I spent with him on campus the weekend that I came to visit,
I know. I do it with one hand. How are you recruited to Notre Dame? We're at this stage where we start sentences and we get distracted. It's like, where was I?
yeah. Where were you on that day? Where were you on that day? I know that there was snow on the ground. And I know that a few weeks before I had been sitting at USC. Palm trees, Pacific. What do you think? What do you think? And I come to Notre Dame and being recruited. I was recruited late. It was February. And the days when we played, you didn't have to commit to a school until May. Now you got to do it in February, whatever, signing day and all this hoopla that goes on. But Notre Dame was really late coming to the party, and that guy, George Young, that high school coach that I was talking about, he put together a film package, sent it ahead, they looked at it, that's how I got the invitation. Otherwise, I had slipped through the cracks, wasn't going to be here. So I go. Ara is in this very humble little office in the Rockney building, in the basement, with no windows. And I'm thinking, well, this is Notre Dame. I mean, this is like, what kind of office thing is this with this great coach that's out there? But nonetheless, his office sort of symbolized what he was all about. He was a quiet guy, very forceful. He had these eyes that were like unbelievable. The eyes, if he gave you the eyes, you really could feel the impact coming through, the soft-spoken nature that he had. And he basically said to me, we really can't promise you anything. All we can promise you is that if you work hard, based on what we've seen on film, what your potential is, you have an opportunity to succeed here. And if you succeed, you'll play. You just succeed in the classroom, you'll play forever. And that was the key for me, because I went back to my mother, get that education. So if I can play forever, then I don't have to worry about any failure on the football field. So Parsegian was very, very soft-spoken in his sales pitch. He didn't say, you're going to be an instant All-American. You're going to play for us right away. You're going to do this, you're going to that, you're going to do that. He basically said, it's up to you. It's really up to you. It's your plan. No different than a game plan that Theismann and I are trying to work with. He'll tell you later on how many times we took a game plan and then that game plan changed during the course of the game. That game plan and that pass route I'm running could change in the middle of the route. If I see the defense change to something else and he's reading me, and all the practices that we did, they talk about guys being in communication. We are one. We are thinking the same way, because if I see that safety do something, I'm going to react. He's looking too. I'm his primary receiver, because in our day, I was the go-to guy. Third down was the possession receiver. I was the guy. There was no check down. I'm the guy. Hey, Joe! That's the long and short answer to the question. He was a great salesman, soft-spoken, but he had no false promises. The one promise he made me was, if you work, you'll get paid. My payment was a solid education that I'm still using today.
Tom, we really appreciate your time. We got to get the quarterback in the chair now. Everyone, give it up for Thom Gatewood.
I'm gonna sit and listen.
Oh, shut. Welcome.
Leave so I can tell stories about you, will you?
Now, Joe Theismann, of course, doesn't need much of an introduction. Runner-up for the Heisman Trophy, All-American, Super Bowl champion, and a member of the class of 1971. Everybody, please welcome one more time Joe Theismann.
Thank you.
Joe, we'll talk about your Notre Dame days, but let's go back to your childhood. You grew up in South River, New Jersey. Right. Was there a big Notre Dame presence there? How did you first become familiar with the Irish?
There was nothing big about South River. It was a town that was about 1 square mile big. I think we had like 10,000 people, 8,000 people, something like that. I grew up 2 blocks from my high school. And so if my mom ever looked for me or my dad was ever looking for me, they knew exactly what to do. It was back in the days when we didn't lock the front doors. My dad got home at 5:15 for dinner. He worked a half an hour from the house and with my uncle's liquor store, and then he had a gas station. My first job actually was cleaning windows, cleaning windshields and headlights on cars and trucks. That was my first real job. I worked at my dad's station. Then he worked for my uncle at the liquor store, and Dad would come home at 5:15. We had dinner from 5:15 to 5:45, and then he'd head back. And so I just grew up in a really simple place. My cousin Billy lived next door. He was a guard on the basketball team. I was the other guard. He was a second baseman. I was a shortstop. All of us that grew up in that little town, and I feel for a lot of young people today because everything is so fast. Everybody's moving so fast to go somewhere. Our idea of moving fast was to get out the door, to get up on the field, to go and play. And so I grew up basically around athletics. My mom worked at Boy Scouts of America till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. My dad worked till 10 o'clock at night. And to a large degree, my grandmother really raised me. She was the one that disciplined me, and I'd always laugh. She'd come after me with the old wooden ruler, the 3-footer. No, not the little one. And she'd hit me, and it would break, and I'd look at her. She goes, kid, it's like, that's Hungarian for, oh, my God, son, you're going to drive me crazy. So, and I don't think they offer Hungarian here at the university, so I'm okay. So I grew up in a really small town. I played Little League baseball, and my mom wouldn't let me play football until I was 12. The coach and my buddies came to the house at the age of 10. Nope, he can't play, he's going to get hurt. Nope, 11, he's going to get hurt. So one of my best friends, Tommy, he was a tackle for us eventually in high school. Tommy comes to the house dressed in a uniform. And he said, this is the equipment that Joey's going to wear, so he'll be protected. And my mother said, okay. So at the age of 12, I was given the chance to play football, so to speak. Baseball is always my first love. I love playing baseball. I played here at the university for 7 games. I got drafted by the Minnesota Twins out of college to play. And Mike Piazza got drafted in the 99th round. I was drafted in the 77th round. Just tells you who was a better baseball player. Humbly, I say that. But no, I mean, athletics has always been a part of my life. I love every aspect of it. And I think, today when you look around at young kids today, both male and female, to give them a chance to be able to go out and play, and there's so many great qualities of life that you learn from having a chance to participate as a part of a team, whether it's dietary, whether it's disciplinary, whether it's educational, whether it's learning how to win, learning how to lose, learning how to get up and go to work no matter what, counting on that person next to you to do their job, just as Tommy was talking about, having the ability to be able to count on somebody and know that they're going to be there. And you develop that over time. And that's what athletics teaches, I think, a lot of young people. And, I'm sure some of you still in some way, shape, or form participate in the game of golf or something else. I mean, I'm a competition junkie. If you and I are at a red light together and we're the first 2 cars, it's on. It's that simple. It's on. I'm going to beat you off the line. And it's a part of what I've always been. But it all started back there in that little town. And I'm so fortunate to have been able to do the things that I was able to do and have the opportunities that I did. My mom and dad's combined income was $12,000 a year. I had a baseball. And then when the cover fell off the baseball, we would put that black electrician's tape on it. Then I had a black baseball. And then when that fell off, we'd have the core, and we'd tape it a little bit more. So a baseball became a 2-year baseball. And then we had a bat, and then we'd break the bat. And then we put a nail in it, and we put some more electrician's tape around it. And so I had another bat. I had a football. When the laces came out of the football, we'd use shoelaces. And then when a shoelace fell apart, we'd just throw the bladder around. That became the ball. I mean, I had everything that every kid had, except mine were modified, I guess you could say, over time, because we just couldn't afford anything else.
When you do get to Notre Dame, you join a quarterback room that has some pretty talented guys in it. Coley O'Brien, Terry Hanratty, just to name a couple of them. What was that situation like your first couple of years on campus?
Well, really, even before I got here, I guess you could say my life is a series of stories. And it really started my senior year when I was recruited by the University of Notre Dame. I was recruited by a lot of different universities. I chose 5 of them to visit: the University of North Carolina, Wake Forest, North Carolina State, Penn State, Notre Dame were the 5 schools I wanted to visit. My high school coach was a guy by the name of Ron Wojcicki, and he was the backup quarterback to Roman Gabriel at North Carolina State. So I said, that's a good reason for me to go to North Carolina State. So I didn't even visit Notre Dame at that time. I was going to go to North Carolina State. I signed a letter of intent. Now, in this day and age, if you sign a letter of intent, there's the possibility you could lose a year of eligibility. Back then, it didn't happen. So I signed, and all of a sudden, Notre Dame came to me again, and they said, look, we know you've signed at NC State, but we'd like you to make a trip out to the university. Joe Yonto was the person that recruited me. So I came out here to the university, and Rocky Blyer and Dan Harshman were my hosts at that time. Of course, Rocky, I'm just an unbelievable human being. Vietnam vet, Purple Heart winner, and just an incredible man. And they took me around, and it was a November day in South Bend. It was a little chilly, a little cold, and the buildings just have a magical nature about them. And then we went to the Rock. Remember, we'd go, the way they would evaluate us is they would evaluate you by letting you play basketball. And the coaches would just watch you athletically. Go do whatever you're going to do. We'll watch you. And for me, it was interesting because I was 5'10" and 152 pounds. And there were 13 other quarterbacks that they had signed in my class. Now, a little bit different than what we see today in collegiate football, Notre Dame would sign what they considered excellent athletes, and they would make you something else. Like Chuck Zlock was my roommate. Chuck became a defensive back. He was a quarterback. Jimmy Gardner became a wide receiver. Other guys became linebackers. Some became tight ends. Some became running backs. I was so skinny, they didn't know what to do with me, so I just stayed as a quarterback. And so here you had Terry Hanratty. Coley actually played halfback. Bob Belden was the other quarterback, and I was the third quarterback. And at that time, we as freshmen they just wanted to beat the living daylights out of us. I mean, think back to the 66 national championship team that we had here. They got to beat up on Tommy and myself. I mean, we would go out there and it's like, oh, I can't wait for this day. These guys, here it is, this is a national championship team, all Americans all over the place, and they're chasing you all over the field trying to beat the living daylights out of you. So I wound up coming to the University of Notre Dame. But it was interesting, the decision I made, I flew back to New Jersey. And in Newark, I got off the plane, and my dad said to me, well, what do you think? I said, I have to go to Notre Dame. And he said, why? I said, Dad, I can't give you any other specific reason other than it feels right. And I contend this, if we trusted our gut, and I think if everybody looks back through their life, if we just trusted our gut for the decisions that we've made in our life, we probably wouldn't have made as many mistakes as we have, allowing our head to get in and analyze the situation. And I trusted my gut. And that's how I wound up here at the University of Notre Dame. Like I said, one of 13 guys. As a matter of fact, when I walked off the plane, Joe Yonto was bragging about me to Johnny Ray, who was our linebacker coach. I walk off the plane, so Johnny turns to Joe and he says, where's this hotshot little kid that you're talking about? He says, it's that one over there. He goes, are you kidding me? He doesn't look big enough to carry a bucket. He's going to play quarterback here? Fine. So what I did my freshman year, I went to my room and I wrote down on a piece of paper, I will be the greatest quarterback ever to play at the University of Notre Dame. Whether I am or I'm not, whether I was or whether I would become that is insignificant to the fact that that's what I believed. I believed that I could do it. And coming to the University of Notre Dame and having a chance to play created the beginning of validations for me in my life. If I could play well against USC, then I deserve to be here. If I could make this football team as a quarterback, then I deserve to be here. And I was here, and many of you are in this room. There were no ladies here. It was an all-male institution. Institution being the optimal word. We felt a little bit institutionalized at times. I mean, St. Mary's was across the road. I went out on 2 dates my first 2 years here. Same girl, Margie Broderick. Margie, why you laugh? Are you related? Are you a daughter of hers or something? Anyway, it was my first year. I wasn't a good student. We had a projected 1.6 needed a projected 1.6 to get into school. It's different now. I had a 1.61. So I got in, and now just give me a chance to see if I can get my classes to where I need them. So,
Talk a little bit about your time on the field here. You play a little bit as a sophomore. You fully entrench yourself as a starter by your junior and senior year. We talked a little bit about that first Cotton Bowl against Texas when Thom was out here. So let's jump to the second one, your senior year. We actually have a clip, so let's take a look at that real quick, and then we'll chat about it.
From the wishbone, Heisman bellies to Skowski, and it begins to look like mission impossible as the defense closes in. But improbable Joe walks the tightrope for the score. Now Notre Dame leads 21-3. And it's hats off to the Irish, who score 3 touchdowns in the first 16 minutes and 32 seconds. And how does it feel to beat the #1 team in the nation? To stop one of the longest victory streaks in football annals.
now, that's why I get goosebumps, when I watch something like that. It's just such a great memory. We lost the first one. Texas threw, I think, 4 passes all year. They threw 2 in the Cotton Bowl against us, and Jimmy Street threw 1 to Cotton Spire, and he happened to catch it. I don't know why I remember those names. It's like having a nightmare recur in your mind all the time. But the second Cotton Bowl was interesting because the way we were ranked, we wanted to play the #1 team in the nation, and that was Texas. I believe Nebraska was #2. We had a lot of options, and Era did something with us that is very unique. He included us as you had a seniors, juniors, and sophomores. He included us in conversations about where we wanted to go. So really, he left it up to the football team to figure out who we wanted to play. And I remember they drew a line from South Bend, Indiana, down to Dallas, Texas. And we could only practice, and there was a line to Miami and a few other places, but it was only within 50 miles of that particular line is the only place we could practice. So we decided to go and play the University of Texas because they were #1 and we wanted a shot at them. The reason why the score turned out to be what it was is I hit just on the next to last series before the half, I hit my ulnar nerve, and I had no feeling in the last two fingers of my right hand. And I couldn't, give me a ball a second. Let me show you. Well, thank you, in a box, I appreciate it. I'm good, I'm just not that good. Tommy, you catch this? Oh, thank you very much. Here you go, take that box back there. You in there. Oh my gosh, was that a throw? Okay, we're done. Me and you, we're gonna work a little bit. But what happens is with the football, now I gotta be you. Now I gotta stand up. What happens is if you can't feel these two fingers, you can only throw a ball with this one. And when I threw it, that's what it looked like. So what happened is the second half, we ran the ball constantly. They managed to come back and make it a closer game than it really should have been. But we weren't able to throw the football in the second half. I wasn't able to throw the ball in the second half. And to Era's credit, he was the kind of a guy who would basically say, okay, if we can't do this, we're going to go to plan B. And it was funny. Plan A worked really well, but when we went to plan B worked out really well. And so we made that modification in that Cotton Bowl. I do want to, the 1970 Notre Dame football team, Peter Chivarelli was Rudy before Rudy. Peter was a Chicago kid. Matter of fact, the Chivarelli room is right next to the locker room in the stadium. Unbelievable guy. And Peter sort of looked up the statistics. I believe in 1970, we as a football team huddled. Okay, we huddled. We averaged 96 plays a game. 96 plays a game from a huddle. And Peter brings that up to people, and they go, oh, you're nuts. Now they have the no huddle, they're running, you see Oregon, all the Chip Kelly, everybody wants to run the ball really. They can't come close to what we did. There was such an efficiency level that we managed to run at, and it was because of our coaches. And it was just amazing. Tom Pagna was our offensive coach. Paul Schultz was the defensive coach. And, of course, every one of us was scared to death of Era. He used to stand in a tower. He was close to God, so what the heck, why not? I mean, that's where he belonged. And now he's there with them. And he's influenced so much of our lives. And he used to stand at a tower, and we'd have two offenses running, two defenses running. And I ran the first offense, and I'd turn around, hand the ball off, and I'd look up, and I knew it was a blown play. And he wasn't looking at me. I went, oh, boy, got by on that one. All of a sudden, I get in the huddle. I start to break the huddle. He goes, Joe, don't let that happen again. I'm thinking, how do you know? How'd you do that? But I love this university. I love what it stands for. I love the principles we have. I love the alumni, our fans, the young men and young women. Our ladies are something special, too. I mean, you look at the championships. They put the moniker out there. They said, all right, guys, look, you go see if you can get as many championships as we can. Soccer, field hockey, basketball. It's just an incredibly well-rounded university. And Tommy talked about diversity as well.
I want to cut in on 1 second, because Joe was talking about the genius of Era. When we were playing in 1970, that many years ago, you've heard of the slot receiver that's so popular now in the NFL, the slot. Well, I was already in the slot in 1970. We were lined up in that formation. If we called something else, I would just step up, and I'd be, a spread receiver, and the guy out here would step back. So now I'm just a spread receiver. I line up at tight end. I start in the backfield, go in motion, and get in another position. In any given set, the key was not to confuse the opponent, but to draw a defender that was in an uncomfortable position on the field. If you make somebody uncomfortable, fear sets in. You have the upper hand. That was the genius of Coach Parsegan, to take one body and really get 5 different positions out of the one body to get in the proper defense setup that Joe could find me and complete the pass. But he would take players, as you said, from a position and then change your position if you were an athlete who could handle that.
You know what I loved about what you just did? That young lady and that young lady are standing there looking at you like they understand what you're talking about. I mean, they're sitting there very intently. I'm in the slot, I'm an X receiver, I'm moved to 5, and they're going, yeah. I love your attention. It was just wonderful. Thank you for that sidebar, Your Honor. They're sitting there going, I'm sorry.
No, you're great. You just mentioned Era and what a great coach he was. Part of that Cotton Bowl beauty is that you guys lost to Texas the year before, get some revenge your senior year, Tom's junior year. Era, of course, played a big part of that. Now, you guys didn't have too many tough losses during your time here. I think you were 23-2 as a starter. But when you look at this year's team coming off that tough loss last week against Georgia, what do you tell them? How do you get them to bounce back this week?
You know, it's interesting. I was over visiting with Coach Kelly earlier, and I don't tell him anything because it's his football team. I try and take myself out of it. But I like to make the observations. We went to one of the most difficult places to play Georgia. We went to Athens, Georgia to play at University of Georgia, who's a darn good football team. They were ranked 3 for a reason. I thought we acquitted ourselves so well in that football game. I mean, yeah, we made a few mistakes. The noise created some issues for us. I think those were the most penalties in Brian's tenure here as a head coach. Things, just circumstances got away. But it was a close football game. I was very proud of our football team. And I think that's what I would say to them. Hey, guys, look, we went on the road. And we played a heck of a football game away from home. Now we're home again. Let's go back to the standard. I don't count the New Mexico game. There may as well have been nobody else on the field. Unfortunately, I mean, the competition just wasn't there. And that's what you're supposed, when you're like we are as a university and you're that good, that's what scores are supposed to look like. I would tell them, listen, we just need to clean up a few things. And if we get the chance, we're going to have a chance at this again. The Clemson game, I think, was a great lesson. But I go all the way back when we lost to Alabama down in Miami. I remember being in the locker room after that game. And Brian stood there in front of that football team and he said, those other guys in that locker room, that's what we want to become. We want to become a feared group of guys. We want to become a tough group of guys who go out and play that way. And that's what this football team has become. We just need to make a few more plays here and there, and I think we're going to be fine. But I think you pat this group on the back. Clean up the mistakes, and we're right there. And they are.
Virginia, a tough team coming to town. You've been around football a long time. They have a great mobile quarterback, maybe not improbable Joe like you. But,
no, better.
What do you think the keys to tomorrow are, and what's your prediction for the game?
I think, first of all, we'll have to run the football a little bit more. I think Ian shouldered a lot of the responsibility in the Georgia game. We put the ball in the air a lot. I think we have Claypool, Fink, those guys will get it done. I think, we're getting a few people back that were hurt, are probably going to be a little bit more healthy. The conditions probably are going to be a bit sloppy, so running the football will be on a premium. And, Tommy will tell you, throwing a football, I used to love to throw the ball in the rain. I had no problem whatsoever throwing the ball in the rain. It's the pigskin actually gets a little tacky. So it's not that hard. You just can't grip it real tight. Troy Aikman used to drive him nuts. When it rained outside, Troy wouldn't sleep the night before because he put his entire palm on the ball and it would just sort of slip out. We grip it with our fingers, some of us. That's why you get the spin that we get. That's a little more technical for you. See, I love the look you guys are giving it. Tommy, they are right here, right now. I love this. I think we have to play Notre Dame football. And this is the way the teams I played for in Washington where we had the success that we had, we never really worried about what was on the other side of the ball. We knew if we dictated tempo and we took care of what we needed to take care of, nobody could beat us. Protect the ball, play at our pace, and we'll take care, and everything will take care of itself.
We have time for about one question from the audience here. Who has a question for Joe Theismann this afternoon?
Joe, how did you enjoy the Toronto Argonauts coach?
I loved being in Toronto. I mean, I would have never left. When I went and played for the Argonauts, my first year we went to a Grey Cup. I mean, I'm going to throw some names at you from yesteryear in college football. These were my teammates with the Argonauts. Jim Stillwagon out of Ohio State. Granville Liggins, both of them Outland Trophy winners. Granville out of Oklahoma. Mel Prophet, All-American out of UCLA. Jimmy Corrigal, All-American out of Kent State. Mike Eben this is the difference in professional football here in the United States and in Canada. My starting wide receiver, Mike Eben, was a PhD in Germanic languages. My starting center, Paul Desjardins, was a PhD in biochemistry. Okay? I can give probably half the guys in the National Football League can't spell biochemistry. No offense to the guys. The other half is fine. Some of them I'm a little questionable about. But I loved. I would have never left. I still call Toronto home. Both Joey and Amy, my two older children, were born in Toronto General. It's always been a special place for me. Whenever I travel to Toronto, I just feel like I'm going home. And I loved, and like I said, I would have stayed. It just so happened the owner at that time wanted to go on an economic stoppage. He just wanted to pull the reins back financially. And then, Doug Flutie, who's doing our games, God bless Doug, he goes up there and they pay him $1 million. I know, we ought to be paid by height, to be honest with you. But Doug, the thing about Doug is, you talk about somebody with heart and ability and desire. You look that up in a dictionary, there's Doug's picture. He's a special kind of a guy, and a dear, dear friend. And he won, I think, 3 or 4 Grey Cups. One in Toronto, one in Calgary, I believe, 2 in Calgary, I believe, and one in BC. Yeah, he was all over the place. But I loved it. Anybody else have a question? Let me take a couple more. I know you have to go? Are you going anywhere? Okay.
No one's asking me questions.
Tommy took some of my time, so yes. I remember my first position here in Washington, or here at Notre Dame. See, I started my sophomore year. As a freshman, we only played 1 game. We played University of Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. We had a guy by the name of Tony Capers was a kicker for us. Huge defensive tackle. He was our kickoff guy. First kickoff, he tears his Achilles tendon. It was the only game I'd never played under the lights. In high school, we only played afternoons at 1 o'clock. I played under the lights in Pittsburgh. It was my first night game. But then as a sophomore, there was a guy by the name of Bob Gladio, whom we called Harpo, and I was a punt returner. I started my career here at the University of Notre Dame as a punt returner. I started my career in the National Football League in 1974 and 75 as a punt returner. In the Canadian Football League, I returned punts up there, but only for the sole purpose of kicking them back. In the Canadian League, you pay attention, both of you. In the Canadian League, they have a thing called a single, or it was a rouge. It's a single. If you kick the ball, if you miss a field goal or you punt the ball in the end zone and it's not kicked out, you get a single point. It was my job at the end of a half or towards the end of a game, if somebody punted the ball into the end zone, I would have to catch it and punt it back out. So I returned kicks at all 3 levels. I did it in high school, I did it in college, I did it in both professional levels I played at. Yes, sir. I played for another one in George Allen, interestingly enough. Matter of fact, I played for 4 Hall of Famers. I played for Bill Walsh in a Pro Bowl, played for Joe Gibbs, played for George Allen, and those were the 3. And then Era's in the College Football Hall of Fame. So I've been very blessed. College football is different than professional football. College football, you get the athlete. For us, it was like 3 years. Now it's about 3 years. In professional football, you're sort of just learning the game after 3 years. But both of them very disciplined. They require discipline from you. Both of them exceptionally intelligent when it came to the game of football. Both of them were in charge, and they made absolutely no doubt about who was in charge. And I was scared to death of both of them. Eric called me in the office one day, and I was, oh my God, why does he want me? Remember, why does he want me in the office? Now your mind starts running. What could I have done? I'm going to class. I'm going to study hall. My grades are okay. I think I'm all right. I walk in, and he basically says, how you doing? I said, I'm doing okay. How are your classes? Good. I say, yep, you're doing well. How are your mom and dad? Okay, fine. All right, I'll see you later. You walk out of there with such a sense of relief. But he would call you on the carpet. And there's a picture. I have a picture at his 90th birthday. And I always think of Era this way. And he's sitting in a chair. And I didn't want him to get up, so I knelt down next to him. And I just knelt down next to him, and I talked to him. And I thought, I would do the same thing if I had the honor of meeting the Pope. It was a papal visit with my coach, is what it basically boiled down to. Anybody else? Being that he's lost total control of this meeting. Yes, sir, first. My favorite game of all time, besides Super Bowl 17? No, actually, it's funny. It's a game we lost. against the University of Southern California in the rain out there in the coast. Matter of fact, at one time I owned 32 records here at the university. As a sophomore playing only 25 football games, I guess, something like that. I only have one left, and that is the record for most yards in a game, and that's 520-some against the University of Southern California in 1970 out in the Coliseum in the rain. Oh, yeah. I never played heavier than 185 pounds in professional football. When I entered the league, I was 175 pounds. After that, I weighed myself just for the heck of it. After the USC game with my uniform, my Notre Dame uniform on, I weighed 197 pounds. I had 20 pounds of water and mud and everything else all over me. But that was a game that just sticks out in my mind. We didn't win it, but it was, I'll never forget walking to the sidelines. They were up, and Era said to me, "We're going to throw every down." Well, I'm a quarterback. You might as well hand me a lottery ticket and say, "Here, go cash this and keep it." And so we threw it all the time. And that was a game that I remember so much. Yes, sir. Thank you for being a longtime Redskin fan. Wait, let me ask you a question. Are there any Dallas Cowboy fans here? Okay, I really don't care. It's a courtesy question. Just trying to clear that out a little bit. That's all. No problem there. Yes, sir.
And I appreciate the way you handled Dallas back then. But you announced 3 seasons this year.
Yes, I did.
And it was great. And I hope that they can get you on.
I won't. Is there a question? No, but thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, the gentleman said he hopes I do more television. I don't think I'll wind up back in a booth. I do Redskin preseason games, which I absolutely love. And, you know, the business is a fickle, funny business. It's the flavor of the month. Who's the next one coming out that they want to stick in a booth for a little while? It just works that way. I had 23 years in a booth, and I absolutely loved it. And to this day, I study the game. I love the kids that are coming in. And what scares me a little bit about the National Football League, and I've always believed that character has to trump talent. And some of the decisions that I see teams making in the National Football League, talent is trumping character. And that just doesn't sit very well with me. I think that's one of the things we learned here at the University of Notre Dame is that character is the most important thing that you can have. If you have character, we have a chance to be able to win. If you don't have character, there's always going to be a problem that underlies everything you want to try and accomplish. And that's what I appreciate about the university and about the programs that we have here, both our men's and women's programs. Yes, sir.
One of the greatest games I heard on the radio, actually I saw on the radio, because we didn't have the television at the time. You didn't get a touchdown, Tom didn't score one, but you beat a great LSU team 3-0.
Right.
Bart Jones was quarterback for LSU.
Bart Jones, yeah.
You're our guy. Potulski is controlling the line. What were your both memories of that game? Because that was a hell of a game.
That to me, I don't know. To me, that was the single hardest hitting football game I played in. LSU was not a big football team, but they were so quick. They had a tackle with them, Rock Perdoni. Tommy Casanova was, I don't even know why I remember these things. I have concussions. Tommy Casanova was their safety. We beat them 3-0. Scott Hempel kicked a field goal for us at that time. But it was an unbelievably fast football team. I liken it to the 49ers when we played them in an NFC championship game. I mean, you blinked and people were on you. And that's the thing about what's neat is there's different levels of football through a season. In the world of professional football, preseason has one speed, regular season has another speed, and each of the playoffs go up a little bit until you get to the Super Bowl, and then everything's moving really, really fast. In college football, you play a team like Georgia, you play a team like Clemson, that's about the professional level you better get used to. Other teams are not quite at that level. I think Virginia is going to be everything we want. We cannot overlook Virginia. We cannot walk out on that football field and say, you know what? We beat New Mexico a couple weeks ago at home. We're back here at our house. We played we played a solid game against Georgia. Let's just go out and it's okay. To me, every day you have to practice and you have to be as good as you can possibly be. And I think that's the most important thing that Brian teaches. He doesn't let these guys get comfortable. and sit back on their laurels. He knew what he was, coming off the New Mexico game, going down to Georgia, I thought our people accounted themselves extremely well. Our guys were really something. Maybe one more? Is there one more?
Joe, are you going to hang around here for a little bit?
Yeah, I'm going to hang
afterwards?
around. Let me just take one more. Yes, I am, as a matter of fact. When did you lose control of this whole operation? When Tommy stepped up here and took my time. I don't believe I was robbed in 1970. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Well, you know, when you really look at the 70 class of quarterbacks, it's interesting. Everybody talks about the 83 class of quarterbacks, Todd Blackledge, all those other guys. There was Archie Manning at Mississippi. Dennis Dummett was at UCLA. Chuck Hickson was at SMU. Rex Kern was at Ohio State. Danny Pastorini was at Santa Clara. And I was here at the university, and Jim Plunkett was at Stanford. Jimmy wound up winning it that year. You know, to me, Hall of Fames, Heisman trophies, they're subjective voting. And, you know, people may or may not like you. What I had writers tell me, and do we have time for a story? Well, actually, how many of you know the story of my last name? Okay, how many don't know the story of my last name? Okay, that group wins. Back in 1970, at the beginning of my senior year, Roger Valdesari, our PR guy, who's the most wonderful human being in the world, Roger calls me in his office, and I had a pretty good junior year. He says, Joe, how do you pronounce your last name? I said, it's Theismann. He said, no, it's not. Alarm went off. Is that the alarm? I'm sorry, I'm still going to keep going. Would somebody answer that? Thank you. Okay. So Roger calls me and says, how do you pronounce your last name? I said, it's Theismann. He said, no, it's not, it's Theismann. I said, no, it's not, it's Theismann. He said, no, Joe, your last name is pronounced Theismann. I said, give me the phone. Picked up the phone, called my dad back home in New Jersey. And anytime I ever had a question for my father, he'd always say, fire away, son. So I dialed my dad up on the phone and said, Papa got this question for you. He says, fire away, Joe. I said, Dad, tell me, how do you pronounce our last name? Dead silence on the phone. About 30 seconds goes by, my dad comes on, he says, son, are you all right? See, you're a senior at the University of Notre Dame. You don't know who you are. What have you been doing at the university? I said, Dad, said, please just tell me, how do you pronounce our last name? I'll explain it later. He said, it's Theismann. I hung the phone up. I said, Raj, look, my last name is Theismann. I know. I just got to phone my dad. He said, Joe, I want to tell you something. There's a trophy out there called the Heisman Trophy. Goes to the best college football player in the country. We think you have a chance to win that trophy, but we're not just going to count on your athletic ability nor the reputation of the University of Notre Dame, but we think by just simply changing the pronunciation of your last name from Theismann to Theismann to rhyme with Heisman, we can guarantee you that trophy. And I had writers come up to me and say, I was not going to be dictated to by a publicity stunt to try and get you the Heisman Trophy. But it was the first time that anybody had really tried to promote someone for it. You know, remember Joey Harrington out in, I guess, Oregon or something? Like a 13-story building. They had this big picture of him and everything. So it started something. But listen, and I had people come up to me all the time and say, and the proper answer is this, and I'll stand, so that means I'm almost done. The proper answer is this. People come up and say, well, you know, you should have won the Heisman Trophy. I say, look, you know, it's an honor being considered for the Heisman Trophy. It's a privilege to have finished second in it, and I'm not okay with it. But it was an honor and a privilege. It's like I was with, one more story. This is regarding a Super Bowl. So we win the world championship against the Miami Dolphins in 1982, Super Bowl 17. I'm in Hawaii. We're there for the Pro Bowl. And they had a nose tackle by the name of Bob Baumauer. Great defensive lineman. So Bobby and I are sitting under this palm tree having a pina colada. So I turned to him and said, Bob, you know, I feel so bad asking this question, but I got to know. I have to know the answer to the question. What's it feel like to lose the Super Bowl? And after I took my head out of the sand, now seriously, what he said to me was, he said, Joe, you wish to heaven you never got there because it's such a crushing feeling to lose it. And I said to him, I hope I never have that experience. Lo and behold, within a year later, we lost Super Bowl 18, and he's absolutely right. It's funny. The New England Patriots went 18-1. They went through an entire season undefeated. Only two teams have ever done that, the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots. They were 18-1, lost the Super Bowl by 3 points, and nobody ever talks about them. because they didn't bring home the big prize. And that's what we're shooting for here at the university. We don't play in a conference. We know that. For us to be able to have a shot at the big prize, we need to be there every day. And it's because of your support and what you're able to do to help us in the stands makes a world of difference. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And Tommy, it's great to see you. Go Irish. Thank you so much.
That's all right.
Sure.